Hey guys, welcome to my first YouTube video. My name's Roosh, but most of you know me as Coterie Inc. I'm a comic book illustrator in Toronto, Canada, and I'm best known for my work on Kings of Nowhere. Kings of Nowhere is a graphic novel based in a world where 1% of the population who face trauma in their childhood have morphed into beasties, people who live the rest of their lives in animalistic forms. Due to this, they face constant discrimination and abuse by humans. As outcasts, the beasties live in the shadows, becoming lords of their own domain, masters of the unseen, and kings of nowhere. Kings of Nowhere was successfully funded on Kickstarter in 2018, and ever since I've been working on more chapters. But I'll talk more about this in another video as we have business to attend to right now. As you can see by the title of this video, I recently held a contest on Instagram called the Draw This Coterie Inc. Challenge, where I asked you lovely people to draw your own original characters and I draw it in my style. Unfortunately, I could only choose 3 winners, and those 3 winners are Jawani, 3 Eyes Blind, and Barney's art. Why'd I choose you guys as the winner? Well, because you're fantastic, and I thought I'd have a ton of fun drawing your characters in my style, so let's just get started already. Alright, so I'm also going to try to answer some of your questions from Instagram as well as explain my process throughout this video. So to start off, I began by creating a frame to place the characters in. I'd already played around with some ideas before just to get a hang of the designs. With this piece, I'm trying to tell a little bit of a story. Just instead of drawing each character individually, I thought it'd be way more fun to have them interact with each other and create a world and a story for them. After roughed out the composition and characters, I can move on to the line work, which is my favorite part. Okay, now let's answer our first question. Cal asks, what are your favorite softwares for digital art? My current favorite software to use is Procreate. I've done my entire comic on it so far, and I've been using it for the past 2 years. I really like how intuitive the program is, and not to mention, because I use Procreate on my iPad, it's nice and compact so I can take it with me wherever I go. Now back to the drawing. I started refining 3 Eyes Blind character first. I named him Charlie because his feather pattern reminded me of a Charlie Brown sweater. For the design of the bird itself, I referenced ostrich riders and other birds with long necks such as the secretary bird. I added bags and luggage to help further tell the story, hinting to the long journey they have ahead of them. For this part in particular, I referenced a lot of horseback riding gear because I wanted to make sure it looked as authentic as possible. And I also love how the artist added wooden clogs to the gigantic bird, so I had to make sure I included those in as well. Moreover, just a little tip, when adding patterns to your characters, you always want to make sure it goes along with the contours of the character. This will help give off a more voluminous look so they appear more 3-dimensional rather than flat. So, the next question we have here is by Nixtay, who asks, when did you first establish your art style? Well, I never really have an answer for this question since I'm still developing my style to this day. It's an ongoing process for myself. Whenever I'm inspired by another artist, I'll tend to pick up subtle traits of their work and incorporate it in mine. I got a lot of inspiration from Samurai Champloo, Afro Samurai, and a bunch of mangas growing up, and they still remain my biggest style inspirations till this day. Now, back to the drawing. Jawani's character really caught my attention. He's a humanoid version of my own character, Ribbit. It felt so meta drawing fan art of someone else's fan art of my own character, but really that's what made it so enjoyable. I'll name him Croak, and I think that suits him well. His original character seems very stoic, which I found funny because, he's in a frog costume. I love the irony, so I had to make sure I captured that in his personality. Okay, next question we have is from Victor, who asks, is there any advice for aspiring comic artists? Your stuff is really cool. Well, thank you, Victor. So, there was an activity my teacher would make us do back when I was in college. He told us to choose a scene from a movie or a show and storyboard that scene. This would put us in the mindset of being a storyboard artist, as it forces you to figure out how you would have planned out a scene panel by panel. This is a great way to practice as it forces you to pay attention to camera placement, pacing, lighting, and composition. Storyboarding in a way is very similar to drawing a comic, just less in-betweens and more focus on the key moments. Now, back to the drawing. I've moved on to Barney's character. He's like a mix of the Joker and the Mad Hatter. His most iconic characteristic would definitely have to be his tongue, and I wanted to make sure I utilized it and had him pull the reins with it. With his crazy demeanor, I thought it'd be really fun if he just traveled floating upside down. It adds to the quirkiness of his character. Drawing any character upside down can get a little tricky at times because there's many things you gotta keep in mind, like making sure your character's clothing is following the laws of gravity. I decided he would be an eccentric Esper named Pogo, capable of telekinesis, because why not? Next question is from JBradders14, who asks, what's your process for inventing your own characters? So JBradders, it starts off with something as simple as, I want my protagonist to meet a sleazeball of a guy who turns out to be doing the wrong thing for a good cause. I get my brain working on the idea, and I think of characters that would best suit that persona. For example, that sleazeball can be a thief, but he's a thief and steals because he needs money for an ill family member, like his mom or his dog. The goal is to always make sure that these characters are interesting and intriguing. Not only do you want to start with a good design, but it's helpful to know their past and history as well. That's usually what helps the audience connect with certain characters. For instance, with the 3 characters you see here, their designs are already so interesting, so it makes for so many possibilities. So in the end, no matter what you're designing, always have the story in mind as you're drawing. I really love the relationship of these characters. For one, it definitely seems like they got off to a bad start, so I'm already interested in knowing how they're going to resolve that along the way. I would love to know any scenarios you guys have for these characters, so please let me know in the comments. Next question is from Frobios. What's your approach to writing out Kings of Nowhere? Did you map out the entire story before, or did you find it out along the way? So I start creating the story like I would create a drawing. The more clear the construction drawing is, the easier and simpler it is to get to the finished piece looking just right. Sometimes I think I want this event to happen. Then I create a roadmap of what needs to happen for the plot to reach that particular event. The same goes for the characters involved. The better I understand the characters and their motives, the more the scene will make sense in the end. It's a lot of back and forth, but the most fundamental aspect of the story for me is that the characters have a goal. Knowing what someone wants makes it a lot easier to understand why they do the things that they do. And at the same time, keep in mind that there's always room to add details to the story along the way. Just make sure you have the premise already set. I left the background for last. The pebbles were definitely the most tedious part of this piece. As the pebbles get smaller into the distance, the lines also get sparser. Generally, the closer something is to us, the more details we'll notice. Further away, I added some palm trees in a village where the 2 characters met and began their journey. As I was finishing this piece up, I realized it almost gave off kind of a One Piece vibe, so I had to make sure I made it into a manga cover by implementing a title. I thought about the name for a while, and Overcast Days seemed like a really good choice. I then proceed to add the colors by creating layers by using a variety of gray tones. One for the character layer, another for the foreground, and last for the background. I added a base color and went over it with another layer that I put on multiply for the shadows. This leads us to our last question. Glimbus asks, does being a professional artist feel like a dream job or just another job? It's definitely a dream job. I love drawing, designing characters, creating my own worlds, and writing stories. Although, it comes with its own obstacles. It forces me to strive to improve every day and be the best that I can be. Ultimately, I really cannot see myself doing anything else. And voila, there we have it, Overcast Days, Chapter 1. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a ton of fun to make. I really appreciate you guys joining me for this. If you guys have ideas for future videos, please comment down below. If you have any questions, same thing. I'll answer as many as I can. Hit me up on Instagram at Coterie Inc. I hope to see you guys soon, so take it easy. Peace out.